a decade earlier. This time, the city promised things would be different. In 2015, they entered into a consent decree with the federal government. A federal judge would oversee massive reforms in the CDP. If citizen complaints don't bring change, if internal investigations don't bring change, if criminal charges against cops don't bring change, if Paul Cristallo's lawsuits don't bring change, perhaps a federally mandated consent decree, a decree, just one click from a fiat, would persuade police that change is nigh. Perhaps not.
Political nonsense.
This is Detective Steve Loomis. Until recently, he was the president of the Cleveland Police Patrolmen's Association, the police union here. Clevelanders of a certain political persuasion, including some cops, I'm sure, just slapped their foreheads and groaned, "Please no, not Steve." Because they know, bald-headed, meaty-fisted Steve Loomis, the guy who dressed convincingly in a Santa hat at the department's Christmas party, and as the dirty biker hillbilly dude when he worked undercover, will say whatever the hell he wants.
Steve Dettelbach can kiss my ass with his bullshit.
Steve Dettelbach was U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Ohio. His signature is at the bottom of the DOJ report. A report which devoted several pages to the substandard way in which the Cleveland Police Department dealt with citizen complaints.
We really don't care about civilian complaints. Not that we don't care that we get that. We don't.
My laughter here is born of shock, not mirth. I'm not going to say I like Steve Loomis. I can't get there. Some of the positions he inhabits are too awful. President Obama has blood on his hands for the police officers killed in Dallas. Racist and anti-Muslim tweets by a CDP sergeant. This is the every American, etc. But I appreciate Steve Loomis. I appreciate that he's got a sense of humor about himself. I appreciate that he appears to be a true believer. That he's sincere when he says even the lowliest rookie patrolman does more to help this community than any other person in government. I appreciate that Steve Loomis gave us 6 hours of his time in one day. 6 hours. Sat there in his union office, packed with Trump paraphernalia, also 1 or 2 cartoons that I'd call racist, he'd call political, explaining his world to us, arguing with us congenially. An aside to Clevelanders who'll complain that the media only quotes Steve because he's colorful and available, who'll say, Steve doesn't represent us. Well, it's true, no other Cleveland officers were permitted to talk to us on the record, and I know from off-the-record conversations that not all of them think like Steve. But that aside, Steve is the man whom the rank and file elected as their leader and spokesman. He does, or did, officially represent the police.
Right.
So here we are. I know where activists stand on the question of reform. I know where a lot of non-activists stand on the question of police reform. But I wanted to know, is reform even possible?
Exactly.
Are the police willing? As union president, Steve Loomis sat on the Cleveland Community Police Commission, the CPC, a group mandated into existence as part of the consent decree. It's supposed to make recommendations on new policies for community policing, bias-free policing, use of force. So you're participating?
Sure.
With a full heart?
Yeah, absolutely with a full heart. The problem that we have on...
I thought there was a time where you just literally had not shown up to a meeting for a year.
No, yeah, you want to believe the rhetoric out there.
I don't know. It was in the newspaper. Is that rhetoric?
Yeah.
In fact, there's been a steady drip of articles in the local press about Steve's spotty attendance at meetings and the many calls for his resignation. In one article, he explained that he'd appointed himself as a commissioner because he didn't want to subject any of his patrolmen to, quote, that farce of a commission. Still, he insisted, he is not anti-reform.
Wait.
He can always improve on what we do.
Wait,
John.
Wait.
But when I asked him about appointing himself as a commissioner because he didn't want to subject any of his patrolmen to, quote, that farce of a commission. Still, he insisted, he is not anti-reform. We can...
But yeah, it's like you want me to do to be reminded?
No. So he became the head dude in charge. Mm-hmm. So his friends basically be getting off on dumb shit. When
he was the president of the union, right?
But he got into that position so he can get people off, so they wouldn't have to go through such harsh.
No, he's talking about some. He was on the. He became a member of that the board for reform and change. Right?
Mm-hmm.
He became.
He appointed himself the commissioner
of that in that position. because it was too, I guess, like mundane of a position to give to any other like officer or you know, whomever else, you know. I guess
No, he ain't admit nothing like that yet.
Reform. We can always improve on what we do, he told me, and I'm happy to take that challenge on. But when I asked him about possible reforms in Cleveland, reforms that are being discussed and implemented all over the country, he vigorously whacked each one aside. Slowing down police interactions with suspects in hopes of avoiding the need for force.
Everybody wants to talk about de-escalation, and that's just a really sexy word for talking. You know,
That seems like good. That seems good. Talking seems good.
But guess what? That's what we've done since the beginning of time.
Fuck no.
Steve would like
Fuck
to see one
no.
study linking implicit bias to police actions and reactions.
Racial profiling. I'm not going to sit here and say that that doesn't happen somewhere else in the world. I am going to sit here and say, in the city of Cleveland, there's no way that it happens. It's not supported in fact, right? Our use of force policy is coming out, and that thing is going to be atrocious.
More restrictions on how and when police can use a gun is
Wait
going
a
to
minute.
endanger his officers, he said, because they'll think twice. They'll be afraid of getting in trouble for doing it wrong, and then it'll be too late. It's a common complaint among police.
Tasering people, you know, well, you can't taser a juvenile. Okay. You
So
know,
I'ma shoot him.
Tamir Rice, nobody wants to talk about it, but Tamir Rice was 5'7", 191 pounds. All right? He's 12 years old.
To Steve, the Tamir Rice case is the perfect example of how people misunderstand and willfully distort what
Okay,
the police
wait.
do.
Okay,
How their
wait.
fixes make no sense. To me, the way Steve talked about the Tamir Rice case was the perfect example of why so many people in Cleveland believe the police have zero capacity for self-reflection, much less self-correction. The officer who shot Tamir was new, young, still on probation. I pointed out that Steve himself, as an experienced officer, had avoided shootings by lowering his weapon. He'd just given me a couple examples. So why is he saying in the Tamir Rice situation, any officer would have done the same thing?
You wouldn't have done the same thing. You're telling me right now you wouldn't have.
Tamir Rice, I absolutely would have done the same.
You would not have done the same.
Absolutely would have done the same thing.
But you're telling me you wouldn't.
Listen, you want to get into Tamir Rice, we're going to get into Tamir Rice.
So it began. Steve reiterated, as he has many times, that number one, Tamir was a big kid, as if that made him blameworthy.
A child in a man's body. Bottom line. There's no denying that. Nobody can dispute that. Number two, Tamir Rice knew exactly why those policemen were driving that marked police car towards him, right? He is a product of the street. He is not a product of
Wait.
loving
Wait.
home.
Wait.
Hang on.
I did hang on, and it got worse, his savaging of Samaria Rice, which I'm not going to dignify by repeating here. Steve has said unkind things about the Rice family in the past.
Alright, I ain't going there. I'm going there.
Did he just
There we go.
He a product of the street. You know why them police officers is coming towards him?
12 years old. He's not from a loving home.
Not from a loving home.
No, he's not from a loving home. Because black people don't have loving homes.
What they got to do with the situation?
No, because black people don't have loving homes. In his mind.
I think he definitely he's from the street.
Yeah. Okay.
He also helpfully suggested they should use the money they got from a lawsuit to educate kids about the dangers of guns. He wasn't worried about his tone or its implications then. He's not worried now. He believes the facts are with him. We disagreed about whether the police drove up too close to Tamir, whether they drove up too fast, whether Tamir pulled the gun from his waistband, whether the shooting of Tamir Rice was a mistake at all.
Okay, we can disagree till the cows come home about what should have happened or why it happened. And my guess is we probably would.
I'm supported in fact.
That's fine. But I think we can all agree it was a horrible, horrible outcome, right?
I said that from day one.
I know you have. So what I'm wondering is, do you see any fixes? Is there a thing where you're like, here is a change that I think could have avoided this? That isn't
No,
only
basically
on
no.
Tamir?
They haven't. It's absolutely on Tamir. It's on any suspect that gets shot by the police.
Actions by suspects cause reactions by police officers.
Wait.
justified reactions.
Okay, wait.
Did police take away any lessons then from the Tamir Rice case?
He said
He said
anybody who gets
shot by the police is their fault.
Because actions makes reactions from the cop.
Not
Never they fault.
not you slamming me and my automatic reflex.
Excuse me.
Your reflex.
Natural reflex.
Your natural reflex.
Exhibit A.
Especially when you're not telling me what's going on. Like my body goes in automatic attack mode. But because they think it's like they don't even say what's happening, they just start grabbing you.
Or shooting.
Yeah. But for them, if they wait a second, they could be the ones dead. That's what their mindset is. And that's not the case.
So the only way to live, we gotta go blue? So we can have the guns? Is that what you're
Nah, fuck that.
I don't know.
saying? That's what I'm saying.
I don't know what they saying. You know, that's some bullshit.
That's some.
You wanna live?
He has to stop. He ain't done.
His
He
case
done?
against him. Sure, he said. We always learn a lesson. So what is it? I don't know, he said. It was, in fact, the only time I stumped him in our 6 hours together. I asked him several times.
He said,
and
I don't
could not
know.
come up with one thing that wasn't Tamir's fault.
It sounds like you're saying there's nothing that needs to change.
No, that's
So what needs to change?
that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is those changes need to be based in reality,
But what should the changes be?
not la la land. Why do we fixate and focus on Tamir Rice? That's the
brought him
bigger
up.
question to me.
You brought
Is
him
we
up.
want to
That's
change
the
our
crazy
part.
entire
You brought him up.
profession based
He
on
did.
a couple different.
That's the crazy part.
When you're saying, why are we fixating on these deaths? Because people are like, enough is enough is enough is enough.
Yeah.
They're saying it's one is too many.
Well,
One accident like this is too many, let's fix it.
Tamir Rice was not an accident. Tamir Rice was pulling a gun out of his waistband. All right.
But we're saying he shouldn't have died for it. He shouldn't have
How do you
died.
fix that?
This is what I'm saying. I think this is what we're all asking. But what's frustrating is
I'll tell you how we fix that. We don't
Oh,
go.
shit.
When somebody calls us and tells us that somebody's at a rec center with a gun, we don't go. That's the only way to fix that. All right?
I guess I just don't buy that.
No.
Okay.
Okay,
I think
wait.
Steve
Pause.
needs to believe what he's saying.
Pause.
The police are never to blame for harming someone in the line of duty. If you end up dead or hurt, it's always because of something you did or didn't do. It follows then that the only ones who need to reform are the citizens. In the name of Cleveland's 1,500 patrolmen, Steve Loomis is
Yo.
folding his arms. Inside his petulance is also a threat. You don't like how we do business? Fine. We'll stop arresting people. See how you like your city then.
Oh my God.
It's the same stance some police officers have taken in Chicago, in Minneapolis, in New York, in Baltimore. The cop-out.
Y'all, that is some martial law shit. That is some, what the fuck, the purge ass shit. Like, we not here to help you. This nigga said we don't come. If somebody call and
How
say,
in the fuck is that helping?
I got a solution. We just don't fucking go.
we didn't, then go.
What?
Wait.
That's not funny.
So what is your job? At this point, what is your
What's
job?
my tax dollars playing
Is
for?
that what you came up with, bro? I would have killed dude right there.
This man said we don't show up.
They tell us to go in the mall, we don't go.
So just people just gonna die. So that means all crime is legal.
He's saying, how do you fix the thing like the Tamir Rice thing? Well, we weren't there when it happened. Basically, like they don't go, and that's a stance that dumbasses have. They just can't, you know what I'm saying, wrap their head around them being the problem. You know what I'm saying? Like he can't even come up with one reason the police was in the wrong at that time. Like, you know what I'm saying? He can't come up with one reason. He's like, no, Tamir pulled the gun from his waist. He was 12 and big. You would kill
So
him.
he was like
He grew up in the streets. So
he said he a product of the
he
streets.
knew what was going on.
His parents ain't love him
He was
anyway.
just flashing the gun and
Basically, he
playing
ain't come
with
from
it.
no loving home. It don't matter. They ain't missing him.
Right.
That is just the
Fuck him, basically.
Fuck him.
Why we keep talking about this motherfucker?
Cause that shit is like big, like the big, like.
I'm saying that's what he said. Like,
yeah. Why?
Oh yeah.
why the fuck
But you brought him up.
Why we so big?
You the one brought him up, bro.
It ain't never gonna be. I just don't ever see it happening.
Then so you want to talk about the Tamir Rice thing? Let's get into it. No, you wanted to talk about the Tamir Rice.
Right.
Boy, I hate niggas like him, boy. I hate niggas like him.
Steve Loomis says Cleveland's problem isn't rotten police or poorly trained police or faulty policies. The problem, he says, is understaffing. And he's not wrong. Even people who can't abide Steve Loomis agree that Cleveland's police department is overburdened and undersupplied and poorly paid. This, of course, is the lament of law enforcement everywhere. Civilians, we need your tax dollars. What we don't need is your oversight.
Damn.
A coda here. A few weeks after we spoke, Steve Loomis was replaced as union president. He had been voted out of office. And I'm not saying these things are necessarily connected, but 8 months later, the team in charge of overseeing police reforms in Cleveland released some stats showing that